invariably, it will become a time where you have to have conversations about long-term care and estate planning, and that's where Denny Mayhone comes in. Denny, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about what you do at your firm.
So our firm is focused on elder law. And so in understanding what that is, we have focused in on lots of areas of law we could work on, and we've chosen just a few to really focus on. So estate planning, asset protection planning, long-term care planning, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's type planning. Something we call life care planning, which is a holistic approach to all of the above. And that's really where we focus in, is helping families navigate through the second half of life. What happens when we start needing assistance? What happens when our minds maybe aren't working as much as or as good as they were?
That's a big fear, right, is outliving your brain. It's not always been a thing. It seems like it's happening more and more often these days. I know that my family's been going through something like that, and it can become an us versus them kind of thing. You don't want to get to that, but then how does one start the process of, I guess, caring for that family member who's maybe no longer able to care for themselves?
So a really good plan starts with estate planning. And so we're often asked, well, what is estate planning exactly? So people have heard of powers of attorney, they've heard of wills, they've heard of trusts, but how do they work? What are they? And so for a power of attorney, for example, it's the most important document we feel that everyone should have. You're appointing someone to do things for you with the same legal effect as if you did. So it could be opening or closing bank accounts, signing your name, selling property, but then there's the medical side. Who gets to make medical decisions for you when you're not able to?
So if you have multiple people, for example, it's a parent that has 2 or 3 or 4 children, is that something that you're dealing with when it comes to who gets that responsibility? Does it all go to one person? Because then what if something happens to that person? Do you split it up? How do you begin to approach that kind of a strategy?
So what we do is we talk with them. First, they have to be over 18, the person that you're picking. Second, it needs to be, and most importantly, someone you trust. So generally what we recommend is one person at a time. Banks, financial institutions, title agents, et cetera, don't want to deal with a committee. They want one person making the decision. And then if that person can't do it, isn't able to, or something happens to them, you have an alternate or a backup. And you can have multiple backups. So in the scenario you gave, a mother with 3 children, I want this child first. If they can't do it, this child. If they can't, this child. But they don't have to be related to you. So for example, my personal powers of attorney, I name my wife. If she can't do it, I have a really good friend who's the backup. And so my other family is kind of spread out in a way, so they're not here knowing really what's going on day to day.
And if it becomes one of those situations, where those children, siblings, whatever, can't figure it out amongst themselves and you can't rely on the parent to do that, what happens then?
If there's no powers of attorney in place, then you're headed to court. And it's called a conservatorship. And that's where the court is going to determine the person cannot make decisions or manage things for themselves. And then the court will appoint someone. That can get very expensive because you have doctors and attorneys involved. And then as a family is arguing about who should or shouldn't, the court has to take all of that into consideration to figure out who is best suited. And all of them may be eliminated at the judge's discretion and appoint a private person. Now you have someone who you didn't want in charge of you, managing your affairs, handling things for you. And so many times you don't get a say in who is doing that for you.
Yeah, I guess that's where being proactive in situations like this come into play. So if you know that you have maybe situations in your family where, hereditarily, is that a word? Did I just make up a word?
I think you're right.
Where if it becomes hereditary, if it's in your family where, you have dementia or you have Alzheimer's or things of that nature in the family, it's time to reach out to you and to your team to begin preparing ahead of time just in case something like that happens. Because once it's too late, then if I'm the person who's having, who's outlived their brain, it's hard for me to do anything about it because I can't. But then if you haven't planned ahead of time, is that possible? Do individuals plan ahead of time for these kind of things?
Sure, many people put an estate plan in place. It could be from the internet, it could be from, they copied Uncle Bob's, whatever. What we tell families is put a good estate plan in place. And a good one has your instructions, not just naming a person to do things for you, but here are the instructions. Here's what I want you to do for me. Here are my preferences. Here are how things go. And so then the second half of estate planning is, what do you have and how do you have it? So if I have a joint bank account, that person has the ability to manage that money for me without a power of attorney. If my accounts are in a trust name, who's named as the trustee, that person has the ability to manage those money. But just because I can manage the money doesn't know I know what's best for you. And so that's where the instruction part of it comes in. And all of that together helps make a good estate plan.
Of course, when you start getting like assets involved, you start having property, or you start having large amounts of money in the bank, that's where this stuff gets really important, because you want to make sure before anybody is unable to decide for themselves what's going to happen there. Because you know, it never fails. You want to do the right thing, but then sometimes people don't do the right thing, and then is it really the person's best interest? That's where you guys get involved. And then the last place you want to go in is into the courtroom. It's like you said, then you have somebody you don't know who isn't uniquely involved in your situation, making decisions that they think is best for individuals they've never seen met before.
Right, and so just because someone gets a diagnosis of dementia, for example, doesn't mean they can't plan then. It's just you're waiting to the very last moment. It's what we call in the legal community capacity. Do they understand what they're signing or what they're doing and directing, and then what the ramifications are of what they're doing? And so we take all of that into account to determine what is the best process, what is the best plan for that person and their family. Because ultimately we want to integrate the legal, financial, and personal care needs so that they get what they want, which for many people is to stay at home. But if they're not able to, how do we protect them and their family? And so those are the big questions that we look at with estate planning. How do we integrate those things together to create that good plan for them?
So we got about a minute left. Really quick, how does somebody get started down this road? If they're listening and they recognize this is something that they need, how do they take that first step? How do they reach out to you or someone else? Let's talk about how they reach out to you.
Sure. What they do is reach out to our team, and we have a team in place, and they will kind of talk through what is it that they're concerned with. We offer workshops, we offer other educational pieces that we can get them so that they can really understand what's going on, and then we can sit down with them if it's appropriate.
Well, let's look right there at the bottom of your screen. You see the name, you see the website, you see the phone number. Reach out to Denny and his team. They're going to be there to help you out. In situations like this, it could get hairy. You don't want that. You want to make sure that everything is ready to go so that you can spend those last days, months, years with your loved one, and you don't have to go through the headache of preparing. Denny, thanks for being here.
Thanks, sir. We appreciate it.